Welcome to Business Line's State of the Economy podcast, where you'll find insight, analysis, and the story behind the numbers.
Hi, dear listeners. This is Raja Simhan. Welcome to the State of the Economy podcast. Driving efficiency in cold chain and refrigeration can deliver 30% of the required energy savings by 2050 while greatly reducing food loss and waste. There is an imperative need to cold chain solutions to cover food production, to reduce wastage and loss in countries like India. By 2030, reports say cooling demand in India is expected to grow by nearly 10 times given the current climate change and rapid urbanization. In this episode, we are going to discuss cold chain infrastructure in India and towards achieving a net zero future. Ravichandran Purushothaman, President Danfoss India, will share his insights on the issue. Let's listen to what he has to say.
Mr. Ravichandran, thanks for joining us in this call. Let me start with the basics, sir. Where are we as a country in the cold chain infrastructure?
Yeah, so thank you very much, Mr. Raja Simhan, for taking this opportunity to hear my perspectives on one of the most important critical industries, which is the cold chain and the refrigeration sector. So where are we? I think we are a country where the penetration of refrigeration as an industry is still very low. At the moment, we are only about 7 to 8% penetrated as a developing country. We cannot compare ourselves with China or the US, where they are all having a higher penetration between 60 and 80%. But within the developing countries, even if you want to compare with Thailand, their penetration levels in Thailand is almost 40% compared to India, 7-8%. The other important facet of this industry is lack of awareness on the importance of this industry. Cold chain infrastructure is, in my view, one of the most critical infrastructures for the 1.4 billion people, simply because it touches almost 8 of the total 18 sustainable development goals. It is such a critical industry, in my view. Second, I think it's also a very important industry, considering the fact about 190 million people are undernourished in terms of nutrition deficiency in India. Coupled with that, we have a food loss in the country. So I think from a food loss and nutrition deficiency point of view, also it's a very critical industry. Lastly, I think cold chain industry is extremely critical, not just for storing food and food produce and processed food, but it's the lifeline for vaccines, medical, pharmaceutical, lots of stuff that goes around in the animal husbandry. So I think this is one of the most critical sectors, which is less understood and even less spoken sometimes, Mr. Raja Simhan.
Yeah. But how do you relate it to logistics, sir? Because people confuse cold chain is not part of logistics. They feel that it is something, it works on a silo. But in your perspective, where does the entire logistics and supply chain come in this category?
Cold chain logistics is, I would say, the lifeline for this industry, simply because the consumption centers and the production centers have to be connected. And this is where supply chain and logistics comes into play. Unfortunately, in India, this is a broken system right now. We have a very fragmented production centers, and with the urban population growing in the urban cities of India, we have disconnected supply chain models, and market linkages are very, very low. So, given the context of where this industry is sitting, pivoting logistics and harnessing the full potential of multi-commodity connection will actually significantly benefit this industry. Just to give you a cost perspective, an apple which is grown in Kashmir, it's reaching Chennai, but in Chennai you get better quality of Kashmir apples, but the cost of Kashmir apples is positioned higher than a Washington apple, simply because, if it has to travel from Kashmir to Chennai, it has to have a connected logistics opportunity for the fruit to flow. Whereas from the port of Chennai, it can get into a Palamud Nilayam and into your houses at a much cheaper price. So this is to give you a contextual background of how our own produces, which is high quality, high taste, is not reaching the households of India.
I agree. Actually, in this whole process, important critical area is the wastage also. Apparently, India is one of the major countries where this issue has not been sorted out for a long time, right?
Actually, I would call it, what we really miss is, firstly, India is blessed with the agroclimatic zones across the length and breadth of our country. And we are also blessed to be the largest horticulture producers in the world. I think today we produce almost 260, 70 million metric tons of horticulture produce. What we really miss, logistics is the end flow ecosystem. But for a produce to get into logistics, there are missing links. Let me try and explain you what they are. First of all, whatever horticulture we produce in India, we are missing pack houses. Currently, as I stand in 2024, India needs 60,000 pack houses. And to my knowledge, organized pack houses in India are only about 1,200. You can see the huge gap in infrastructure. What is a pack house? Pack house is really where the grading and sorting takes place. The A grade, B grade, and C grade. Now, A grade can travel its shelf life provided it is temperature controlled to a consumer. B grade is somewhere there is a problem with the fruit, but it is still manageable. But the shelf life can be lesser than the total shelf life the produce can do. And the C grade is where there has been a small damage, which means if you want to capture value in the C grade, you need to process that particular fruit or a vegetable or whatever it is immediately in the next 48 hours. Because we lack pack houses, we are not having the capacity of goods to flow. This is our first problem. The second problem is, even in the 1,200 pack houses that we have, every commodity has a different temperature. For example, if you take banana, we need it at 11 degrees. Apple is going to go at 4 degrees and below 4 degrees. Vegetables, if you cut them and send it, you might need it at -4 or -5 degrees. If you send them fresh, it needs around 6 to 7 degrees. So the art and science of storing each of it as a protocols are not fully defined in India. That's where National Center for Cold Chain Development under Ministry of Agriculture tried to kind of set up a protocol management approach, which industry along with NCCD we worked for more than last 7-8 years. And today we have laid out a protocol standard of what is the different types of produce and what is the temperature control for each of these producers. Today, at least we have a framework that is in place on paper, which we need to institutionalize in terms of an operating model on ground. So reefer becomes the next challenge. You need to connect the reefer trucks from point A to point B. Fortunately, India, we have enough cold storages. And the reason why we have enough cold storages, at least when I say enough cold storages, for the capacity we produce today, our shortage is only about 5%. But that can still be addressed through better throughput model and better management of the flow between cold storages, which is more a logistics challenge and not really a capacity challenge in my view. So pack houses, reefers are the two big challenges. There are certain category of producers where we need ripening chambers. If we are right now in the midst of a mango season and mango, the taste of mango is directly proportional to the quality of ripening you do actually. Now, ripening is a big opportunity as well in the supply chain model, because when to ripen, where to ripen, how much to ripen can be decided by a trader, provided if you have a good supply chain model. So we also miss ripening chambers. So just to summarize, we almost miss 100x level capacity of pack houses. We almost miss about 10x reefer capacity. We have 10x more of ripening chambers. But in terms of cold storages, I think India needs about 40 million metric ton at the moment based on our production. And I think we already have about 35 million metric tons. So there's a small gap, but that is manageable provided we manage our throughputs of the entire supply chain model.
But can you just give a perspective on the kind of demand which is required, considering that we are growing at a substantial pace? So by 2030, what sort of demand can we expect in this cold chain storage and infrastructure?
So currently the market is about $350 million in India, and we anticipate the market's growing about 14 to 15% year on year. What is driving this demand? I guess one of the biggest demand-driven parameter is the per capita income increase in the urban cities, the lifestyle changes of working families, processing levels going up in certain commodities, nutritious products being sought after by urban centers. So there are multiple demand drivers that is really driving the need for these kind of cold chain logistics setup. I mean, in my estimate, we should be a 1.2 to 1.4 billion dollar industry as far as 2028 is concerned, in my view.
We talked about the demand, but there are many issues affecting this industry, right? Can you just specify them?
I mean, you're specifically asking about the cold chain industry or?
Cold chain industry.
Yeah. So, primarily the challenge really is, this industry is challenged by, one is by multiple broken supply chain models. We have a very fragmented supply chain. And one of the biggest challenges is that if I have to ship something from, say, Theni as a district in Tamil Nadu, which produces banana, and if I have to ship Theni bananas to New Delhi, I have to have a multimodal connectivity. Today, I don't have that multimodal connectivity. I cannot ship through train because maximum it can reach probably Theni to some local center, and then again I have to transship it in Tamil Nadu, then I have to transship it in Agra, then it has to reach the Azadpur Mandi in Delhi. They are all broken connections. So this is one of the biggest challenges, that we do not have a free-flowing multimodal logistics portal. The Gati Shakti program that Government of India recently launched about 4 years ago is basically aimed at fixing this problem. But I think, we are still in the process of fixing the infrastructure for multimodal, but free flow of goods is one of the biggest challenges in my view. The second, I think when you compare our infrastructure with the rest of the world, the size and the capacity of our infrastructure is very fragmented. I mean, if you take the country like Thailand, there are 11 or 12 large cold chain operators operate the entire supply chain management of the country. Whereas if you take in India, the 40 million metric ton capacity that we have installed today, there's probably 10,000 owners of that capacities. So because of fragmented ownership, scale is missing. And because scale is missing, competitiveness is missing, and the cost of doing business is also very high. If you look at global models, whether it is US, whether it is China, whether it is Europe, or whether it is Thailand, they have these, on the highways, they have these multi-commodity large capacity storages, which of the size of 1 million, 2 million, 5 million metric tons actually, and also storing multiple commodities. I think this multiple commodity cold storages in India, very few. They're hardly a handful. Because, like meat requires minus 30, fish requires minus 30, milk requires 4 degrees, apples require 4 degrees, fruits and vegetables, when they are cut, requires minus 20. So they have built a model which flows through one large center, a distribution center kind of a model, compared to our fragmented model. So what happens when you put the logistics cost on that commodity? Apple is an expensive crop, so it still is able to be afforded by the rich people. But the real freight cost of an apple is actually 2.5 times the cost of growing an apple. So you can see the kind of paradox we have because of our fragmented challenge on this. Now, the last challenge, in my view, is technology and skill gap as well. I mean, you need to understand that refrigeration is an energy intensive industry because it uses a compressor, which is using again a refrigerant. And that's how you generate the minus 30 degrees or plus 4 or 5 degrees actually. And cooling demand already, in India is extremely high, especially in the summer. I mean, you might have read a lot of stories about the energy demand arising out of cooling alone. So it's a highly energy intensive industry which requires sustainable technologies. And I think this is one area where we come in and play because we are now working with universities to develop the entire ecosystem where we are not only looking at energy efficiency, but we are also looking at natural refrigerants as a solution for India. So this is an area we have really looked at, enhancing our depth into the ecosystem and solve the technology challenge that India is facing in terms of this industry. Skilling, of course, is very important because you use refrigerants to store. I mean, today we use ammonia, we use freon, we use CO2, and all of these technologies require safety operating mechanisms. So, skill, technology, broken supply chain, energy cost, lack of scale. I think these are some of our challenges right now.
Uh, what should government at the center and state governments should do to address all this? I know these they are working in silos to some extent. Maybe is it time that maybe both center and state government should collectively do it, or maybe whatever the state governments, let them do whatever they want. Maybe let them provide basic infrastructure. What sort of connection should be there?
So actually, if you look at horticulture sector, if this is freed up for the private sector, I think the private sector will find a good solution to the problem. The problem really is, agriculture is a state subject, horticulture is a state subject. But within the state subjects, if you look at some models that have been built in India, we can take some leaf out of those books and replicate them in multiple areas. You just look at the pomegranate industry, the grapes industry, and the mango industry, and the dairy industry. They seem to have found a lot of privatization and a lot of private players getting into it to scale that industry actually. The problem is, government should be more an enabler for this. And of course, subsidies are today being offered for apple storage because potato storage and onion storage, because apples, potatoes, and onions, are very, very important products for political reasons. I mean, even Maharashtra, you heard the story about the onion problem during elections, after elections, now after even 1 month after the election. Potato is another big topic. So I think we today have a lot of focus on storage on these three areas, and it's highly government controlled in my view. But I think somewhere we need to look at how do you bring in a lot more private players. And when I say private players, it is not multinational companies or it is not large private companies. How do you even scale up a farmer producer organization to become a large producer player like Amul, for example, or the Sayadri grapes example in Maharashtra, or the pomegranate producers in Maharashtra and Karnataka in Belgaum. So I think there are multiple models available. I think we need to encourage. In my view, the government needs to look at 5 things. One is they should work closely with the agriculture university on capacity building and scale up deployment of technologies and also upgrading the farmer skills and capacities on deploying technologies and skills to produce and harvest and pack and grade and sort in a sustainable manner. I think once you start to produce good quality, once you start to grade good quality, once you start to segregate good quality and start to process, you will really see the value capture going. I'll give you one small example of what I'm trying to tell you. If you go to Philippines, today Philippines is value adding a banana. Banana is bought from a farm at what, 6 rupees per kilo to 12 rupees per kilo based on the quality. But they take the value addition on banana up to almost 70 rupees to 80 rupees in Philippines. In India, we don't add value on the 12 rupees. We probably have reached a level of 18 rupees or 20 rupees in value addition. But we have to look at how do we increase the value capture on many of these products, because every commodity in horticulture has a shelf life, and we don't really harvest the full potential in that available shelf life. And that is why we feel, for example, the grapes industry have started to look at making wine out of it, making byproducts out of grapes. So if the industry is able to add more value to the produce and more processing goes up, automatically food value chain and logistics supply chain also grows, in my view.
Is it not very capital intensive for the private people to invest in?
It's not, because there are today business models available which you can use somebody else's storage facility if you have the capacity. I mean, it is like a truck, right? If you want more trucks, truck owners will start giving you more trucks.
So finally, I know, in fact, Danfoss is a pioneer in this industry. So what can we expect? What sort of plans you have around the cold chain infrastructure? Can you just, and what facilities you have now? Where are we in some perspective on that?
So when it comes to Danfoss, we are doing multiple levels of actions currently in India. The first is, as I mentioned to you, we are launching products that pivoting on the energy efficiency levels in India, where we have launched a lot of high efficiency products for apple storage, milk storage, bulk milk collection. And some of these technologies are now even run from renewable energy, so that you can disrupt the fossil fuel requirements coming from this industry. Technologically, we are also launching a lot of natural refrigerant technologies. One of the areas we have worked very closely is using CO2 as a refrigerant instead of ammonia or freon for refrigeration and heating applications, where we work together with Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. And now we have built contractors for it, the right stainless steel piping technology for it, new players in this industry who will change the paradigm of this industry. Young people who can start operating CO2 technologies in India in a safe manner. CO2 is a high pressure gas, right? So if you want to use CO2 as a refrigerant, the infrastructure has to be built with high quality and high precision. So we have worked with the universities, we have worked with contractors, we have worked with customers, and slowly educating them to build a new ecosystem, because I think India cannot follow the path which many other developing countries and developed countries have taken. We have to disrupt our energy in storage. We have to disrupt our refrigerant usage. Therefore, we are doing this closely with universities and building this ecosystem approach. The third thing that we are doing is we are also publishing a lot of policy intervention areas that are needed. For example, we did a study on southern region along with CII to look at, in the 10 cities of southern region, what is actually getting consumed in terms of perishables, what is the source of these products, and what is the gap in terms of reefers or pack houses, or very tangible data that is getting into this actually, and going and pressing into the state governments and saying, okay, this is what we have to solve in Hyderabad, this is what we have to solve in XYZ places. So we are bringing a lot of policy intervention in order to make sure that there is a seamless movement of perishables across the length and breadth of the southern region. Um, in terms of policy, we are also looking at working closely with Bureau of Energy Efficiency in elevating, 5-star labeled technologies so that, we have to disrupt the energy envelope, and especially when you want to store, horticulture and perishables, you really need to disrupt the energy requirement. Otherwise, you end up actually using a lot more energy. Then we have also worked with, governments to look at auditing some of the old cold storages, which are storing potatoes and onions, and looked at how can we upgrade them to newer technologies so that we can make them a lot more efficient. So we have done a lot of upgradation programs for that industry. Then we looked at the fishery sector. I think one of the big changes that is happening is that the amount of fish or aquaculture that we are growing on land is increasing more than what we catch from the sea. Now, how do you do this in a more sustainable manner? And I think there are lots of case stories that we have built, and some of them are already on the YouTube. And you can see now we have built a complete, almost close to decarbonized model on supply chain for aquaculture. So there's been multiple levels of knowledge, thought-led, policy-led interventions. We are working with several stakeholders, state governments, multiple Bureau of Energy Efficiency, Bureau of Standards, Ministry of Power. And then the last one that we work is on the skilling part. Now, for skilling, we have done multiple programs where we have skilled, educated farmer producer organizations, what to store, how much to store. We have also skilled the NABARD officers who are funding so that they know what to fund, what technologies to fund, and what technologies can be harmful for us, where they should not fund, what could be the checks and balances to make sure that infrastructure is sustainable for a 20-year life cycle and not for shorter periods of time. So we've educated even the NABARD officers as one example. We've also worked with universities and set up competence centers. There is a university called NIFTM in Delhi, in Kundli, which is basically National Institute of Food Technology, Entrepreneurship and Management. So our idea is to really build infrastructure models which brings in a lot of young entrepreneurs and startups so that they can look at disrupting this industry using technologies that are sustainable, that are scalable, that are over a period of time can add more value to the entire logistics supply chain models. So there's been a lot of work on skilling that we have been doing, apart from engaging with startups and also universities.
You talked about technology. Any adoption of AI in this, or is it too early?
AI is already an integral. I mean, for example, the current optimization of the energy is using an AI tool, actually. So AI is an integral part of it already.
Okay.
Where AI can be even more deployed is, I was telling you, Mr. Raja Simhan, about broken linkages of demand versus supply. Like when we were deploying this model, consumption centers versus production centers of southern India, today we have data available, what is produced in every city, all kinds of commodity, and what is consumed in every city, what kind of commodity. Now, we can actually, we have given this data, and I think one of the Boston universities is looking into this data. So we need to put a lot of AI into these areas, because these are areas where it creates a lot more visibility for us, both in terms of creating infrastructure as well as in terms of helping government to do policy intervention, because they need to decide where to put up cold storages. Sometimes cold storages are approved in places where there is no electricity, as an example. But if you know the demand and supply in a state, identifying where to put and where not to put, that decision making helps and enables the government officials.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much. It was really nice talking to you, sir.